Hello everyone, Interact here, back again with another episode of Entity Education. In this episode, we're going to be covering the thick boy, the man with two names, Kenneth Jeffrey Hawk Chase, probably better known as the Clown. As always, there will be timestamps up on the screen right now, and also down in the description of the video if you want to skip around to certain sections. The Clown has the very boring and very basic killer stats, movement speed of 115% or 4.6 meters per second, terror radius of 32 meters, etc, etc. You've probably heard most of this before if you've seen most of my other videos. Most of the killers in Dead by Daylight have roughly the same base stats, there are only really a few outliers. Let's talk about the Clown's power, the Afterpiece Tonic. The Afterpiece Tonic consists of 4 bottles that you will start off with by default. These function similarly, mechanically at least, to the Huntress's hatchets, in that you can tap M2 or mouse 2 to toss a bottle a short distance, but you can also hold mouse 2 to charge up your throw, making it go further. Unlike the Huntress's hatchets, however, they mostly just go further forward. They don't straighten out like the Huntress's hatchets into a near straight line. They still have a large curving arc where they go up in the air, unless you aim downwards or upwards to make the arc less or more. Once your bottle collides with literally anything, an object in the environment, a survivor, random invisible walls, pallets, anything, it will break and disperse a toxic cloud in the area around where the bottle just shattered. This does mean that you need to be a bit wary of the arc of your Afterpiece Tonic throws, especially while indoors, since you don't want your bottles to break prematurely on, say, a ceiling or a random piece of garbage in the environment. Any survivor who comes into contact with your vape cloud, even just the very edges of it, will become intoxicated, slowing their movement speed by 15%, impairing their vision, and forcing them to cough. Despite what the tooltip says that everything lasts for 2 seconds, the movement speed slow seems to linger for about 2.5 seconds, and the impaired vision seems to also linger for about 4 seconds after you leave the vape cloud, although it's a bit hard to tell since the vision impairing has kind of a wearing off period, where your vision is still slightly blurred, just not as heavily as it was previously. If survivors continue to just stand around in your Afterpiece Tonic bottle break cloud thing, it really needs a better name, they will continue to suffer from all of these things until the cloud disappears, which takes roughly about 8 to 9 seconds by default. The reason I say that it's about 8 to 9 seconds by default is that the cloud has a bit of a weird lingering effect in the area where the cloud existed, where even if they walk through it and the visible portion of the cloud seems to have disappeared, they may still get affected by the intoxication. I'm not sure whether this is a bug or intentional, it could just be based on graphics settings or something, who really knows. Once you run out of your bottles, or you feel you just want to have a full suite of them to use, you can press and hold down left control by default on PC to refill your bottles by swishing one in front of you. This will take you 5 seconds to do by default, and you will be slowed for the duration of the reload. I'm making a bit of an assumption here, but I assume that the slow brings you down to roughly about 80% speed, which is a very large slow. And this is based on what the data mining on one of his add-ons that we'll cover later in the add-on section says, which means you're gonna really feel the slow, since 80% is pretty darn slow for a killer to be going in Dead by Daylight. After throwing an Afterpiece Tonic bottle, much like with other killers, in the same vein such as Huntress or Billy, you will enter a brief cooldown period of 1 second where you'll be unable to either throw another bottle, vault a window, kick a generator, attack, etc. The same as I said, those other killers with cooldown periods. If you manage to land a direct hit with your bottle, in addition to all of the other things that I've previously listed happening, it will also interrupt whatever they're doing. Things like unhooking, working on generators, opening exit gates, healing, etc. This can be fairly difficult to pull off since the bottles aren't extremely precise like the Huntress's hatchets, but it can be extremely satisfying when it does stop and unhook and net you a kill, or stop a gate opening, or let you grab the survivor because they try and restart it. Now let's get into the details about the add-ons that you can equip as the Clown. Starting off with the common tier, we have Smelly Inner Souls. Smelly Inner Souls will slightly increase your movement speed while reloading. This means an increase of 20% to your movement speed while reloading, but I've sworn off testing movement speeds without a developer kit, since it's just kind of a headache and a nightmare to even get a remotely accurate number. Next up, we have Robin Feather, which will slightly decrease the cooldown time between after-piece tonic throws. This means a 20% reduction in cooldown time, bringing it down to a cooldown between throws of 0.8 seconds. The next add-on for the clown is Fingerless Parade Gloves, because apparently the clown is really into My Chemical Romance. Fingerless Parade Gloves will slightly decrease the reload time of your after-piece tonic. This means a reduction of 20%, bringing your reload time down to 4 seconds. And the final common add-on for the clown is Ether 5 Volume Percent. Yes, that really is the name of it. I looked it up. Volume percent is a real thing in chemistry. I guess there is a reason that I failed chemistry, because apparently I just wasn't paying attention. Ether 5 Volume Percent will slightly increase the intoxicated effect duration. This means an increase of 0.33 seconds to the intoxicated effect once they leave your cloud. Now moving on to the uncommon add-ons, we start off with a really good add-on in my opinion, and one that I run a fair amount of the time, Thick Cork Stopper. Thick Cork Stopper will moderately decrease your reload time, meaning a 40% reduction, bringing your reload time down to 3 seconds. Those 2 seconds saved can mean a lot in the course of a game, since you're throwing probably a lot of bottles. Then we have a pretty basic filler add-on, Sticky Soda Bottle. Sticky Soda Bottle will start you off with 1 extra bottle of after-piece tonic, and increase the maximum amount you can carry at any given time by 1. This just means that you'll have 5 bottles instead of the normal 4 during any given match. Following that, we have another feather add-on with Starling Feather. Starling Feather will moderately decrease the cooldown time between after-piece tonic throws. This means a 40% reduction in your cooldown time after a throw, bringing it down to a cooldown of 0.6 seconds. Then we have the first of a few add-ons that gives your bottles a debuff applied to them in addition to the normal intoxication effect, starting with probably the best one, Solvent Jug. Solvent Jug will make any survivor who is hit by the intoxication cloud suffer from the exhaustion status effect for 30 seconds. An extremely good add-on worth running to make sure survivors don't get to use their exhaustion perks in a chase. And following up on that wonder of an add-on, we have probably the worst add-on, Kerosene Can. Kerosene Can will make any survivor hit by your intoxication cloud also suffer from an additional blindness status effect for 30 seconds. Yeah, great. Now moving on to the clown's rare add-ons, we have a lot of upgrades in cycles and a few potent new add-ons. We will start off with VHS Porn. Yes, that's really the name of the add-on in Dead by Daylight. VHS Porn will moderately increase your movement speed while reloading. This means a 35% increase to your movement speed according to data mining, but as previously stated, I am not testing movement speeds because it's really just a hassle and not worth it. This is the add-on I alluded to earlier when I said that your movement speed while reloading is going to be probably 80% speed, since they wouldn't make an add-on that would make you able to move faster than 115% speed while reloading, since it would be easily abused. Then we have Sulfuric Acid Vial. Despite the fact that this would seriously mess you up in real life, in the game it applies the Mangled status effect for 120 seconds or 2 minutes to any survivor affected by the intoxication effect from your afterpiece tonic. And next up we have a really good add-on, Flask of Bleach. Once again, despite doing serious harm to you in real life, in the game, this will only make survivors who are intoxicated suffer moderately from an extra hindered penalty. This means an increase in the slowdown of your intoxication effect by 5%, making your intoxication slow them by 20% total, which is very good. Following up on that, we have Ether 10 Volume Percent. Ether 10 Volume Percent will moderately increase the intoxication effect's duration. This means an increase of 0.66 seconds to your intoxication effects. And the final rare add-on for the clown is Bottle of Chloroform. Bottle of chloroform will moderately expand the afterpiece tonic gas area of effect. Without any data mining to assist me, I attempted to test this, but without being able to get a perfect bird's eye view of a cloud with nothing obstructing it, which would probably require a dev kit, it's extremely hard to say what the exact number is. Based on my testing though, it seemed to be an increase in the area of effect of the gas cloud by about 15 to 20%. Sorry, it's not more precise, it's really difficult to test. Now let's move on to the clown's very rare add-ons. We start off with a Garish Makeup Kit, a much tamer name for an add-on than maybe some of the previous ones. Garish Makeup Kit will moderately expand the afterpiece tonic area of effect, and also make the cloud last moderately longer. As I said, this means an increase in area of about 15 to 20%, but I could be slightly off on the numbers by, 5 to 10%-ish. I'm not entirely sure without a developer telling me exactly what it does and how it functions. I assumed it made the circumference of the circle increased by about 15 to 20%. It could change just the radius or the diameter, I don't really know, without developers telling me or having access to a developer build or access to the actual source code of the game. Garish Makeup Kit will also make the cloud last for, oddly enough, 9 seconds. I double checked my testing on this one, since about 9 seconds is the base lingering time for clouds, so I'm not sure if it's just bugged or if it makes it linger after the actual visible cloud has disappeared. It's hard to say. And next up we have another repeat in the cycle, Ether 15 volume percent. Ether 15 volume percent will considerably increase the intoxicated effect duration. This means an increase of 1 second. And following up on that, we have Cigar Box. Cigar Box will slightly expand the gas's area of effect, and also slightly prolong the intoxicated target's blurred vision. This means an increase to the cloud's area of about 15%, and an increase in the blurred vision time of 12.5%, bringing it up to 4.5 seconds. And the final very rare add-on for the clown is a nice basic one, Cheap Gin Bottle. Cheap Gin Bottle will start you off with 2 extra bottles of afterpiece tonic, and allow you to carry 2 more at any given time, bringing you up to a base amount of 6 bottles. And now let's get into the ultra rare add-ons for the clown. Honestly, these ultra rare add-ons seem pretty lazily designed in my opinion, but honestly I have no idea what in the world else you would do with add-ons for him, so I don't really have any better ideas. We start off with Tattoo's Middle Finger, which is really just a middle finger of an add-on. Tattoo's Middle Finger will reveal the aura of intoxicated survivors for 6 seconds. That's literally all it does, and it's ultra rare. Moving on from that disappointment, we have the ever-toxic Redhead's Pinky Finger. Redhead's Pinky Finger will make it so any survivor hit directly by your afterpiece tonic bottle will suffer from the exposed status effect, making it so you basically walk up behind them, land a direct hit, and then down them instantly. Much like with the iridescent head on Huntress, many survivors will just give up if you're any good at landing direct hits, so run this add-on at your own peril, or if you really want to see everyone just disconnect. Now let's discuss how to play the clown. Honestly, the clown's playstyle is fairly one-dimensional, hence why not a lot of people really enjoy playing him, and there's the whole running joke of there are no clown mains. His power is fairly unique and pretty neat, but in essence it only really serves one purpose during the course of Dead by Daylight. You use it to slow down survivors and make loops easier to get through. That's basically it. So let's talk about how you should be using your power at loops. Essentially, you're going to want to throw your afterpiece tonic at the survivor when you're close-ish to them, and they're going to drop a pallet. Typically this makes survivors panic and just drop the pallet, or if they won't drop the pallet, you can probably just land an easy hit on them since they're fairly slow, essentially just skipping the loop. If they get to a loop before you think you can force them to drop it with your vape cloud, throw it at the opposite end of the loop from the pallet, and then run it like normal. Typically this ends up with the same scenario. They're running the loop like they normally would, they hit your cloud, become intoxicated, kind of panic, and throw the pallet down out of fear. This is really the clown's main strength in Dead by Daylight, getting through loops with relative ease. Now you might be thinking, so if he can get through loops with relative ease, that should make him top tier, correct? That's what all the other top tier killers have. Well, not necessarily. What really keeps him out of the top tier with killers such as Nurse, Billy, Huntress, Hag, etc. is he lacks mobility and map pressure. While he excels at looping, he gets through loops with relative ease. He is just a basic 115% speed killer when you're not at a loop. You can't throw bottles at survivors to damage them across the map like Huntress, and you can't, zip around the map quickly like you can with Nurse or Billy to really keep the pressure up on survivors that aren't downed or hooked. So, since I don't have too much to talk about here, let's go over some more obscure techniques, and things that I don't really think people think about too much or really know about the clown, because most people just kind of gloss over him because they just don't find him fun to play. I'll also cover some common mistakes that I see clown players making and try and correct them. As I mentioned a little bit earlier, if you do land a direct hit with your bottle, it will cancel any channeled animation the survivor is doing. This means that you can use your bottles if thrown extremely well, and it is slightly difficult to do, to stop things like unhooking, healing, gate opening, generator repair, etc. It is fairly hard to pull off, as I've stated many times before apparently, and it will require a lot of practice and knowledge of how exactly the bottles arc when you throw them. It does feel extremely nice when you can pull it off though, so if you do plan on playing clown a lot, try practicing long-range direct hits with your bottle. Another thing that some people don't seem to know about, and it's possibly because it's slightly bugged, is that you can use the slowdown from your Afterpiece Tonic vape cloud to force survivors to medium vault windows when they might normally get a fast vault. Because of the way the game is coded, it can be a little finicky, but basically if you hit them with the slowdown before they are in the animation for a fast vault, and when they aren't further than the required 2.5 meters from the window, as I said, sometimes it's a little finicky on that one though, it will force them to medium vault the window instead of fast vaulting, potentially landing you an easier hit. This can sometimes just not work, because I think it's bugged and it's been confirmed by the developers that it's bugged. But if they're already in the animation for a fast vault, and the animation prompts kind of show up decently far away from windows sometimes, it won't work, and sometimes the game just doesn't feel like stopping them from fast vaulting. I don't really get it. This is another one that you'll have to just play the clown if you really want to and kind of get a feel for when it should work and when it won't, but it can help you a lot out at some pesky window loops. As I said, if I remember correctly, Behavior has stated that the Afterpiece Tonic is supposed to always force a medium vault, but when they changed the requirements for a fast vault, it was months back I think, to the whole, they have to be 2.5 meters away and then have a running start thing, it just kind of bugged it, and it's not that major of a bug, so I don't think that they're really focused too much on it, but it's just one of those things in Dead by Daylight that just doesn't really work the way it's supposed to sometimes. Now let's cover some of the mistakes I said I see a lot of clown players making. You shouldn't really ever be throwing bottles at survivors out in the open, unless you're 100% sure it will slow them down enough to net you a free hit. You only have a limited amount of bottles, 4 by default, and reloading during a chase, unless it's something stupidly safe, like they have balanced landing and they're at a house in Haddonfield, or it's the Ironworks window or something, you're just going to lose a lot more time in the chase than the extra bottles will actually help you in that chase, because you do get slowed down. It does take 5 seconds to do by default. That's 5 seconds where they're running probably 20% faster than you, and you're losing way too much time. So you want to save your bottles for the best possible moment to be using them. Times when you want to be saving them for is when you know you can get the hit, you can force out a pallet, you maybe slow them down at a window and land a hit, things like that. As with most things in this game and in these videos, as I state, there isn't really a magic formula that I can tell you for when you should be using them and when you shouldn't be using them. It's just kind of something that you get a feel for when you get a little bit more game sense and more muscle memory while playing as the clown. There are a few other uses for bottles and Afterpiece Tonic vape clouds, such as using them to scout out if survivors are in an area, because they do scream when they get intoxicated and you get a little notification, the scream notification from the doctor, and you also get a blood point notification when they run into the clouds if maybe they're running Calm Spirit. Or you could use bottles to scare survivors off of generators from a decent distance away if you arc the throw really well. But honestly, these aren't all that useful because of what I just talked about. You really need to have your bottles for loops so you can power through them to kind of make up for your lack of map pressure by just getting through every loop and making every pallet gone, and then you just hit them and kill them. The problem is really that reloading just takes too long, and you get slowed down so much that it's not really viable to do any of these extra special techniques like pushing them off of generators or whatever. You just need them for loops. I mean, that's all you have going for you as the clown. I like the clown, but I just hate that that's all he has. Now let's get into the teachable perks you'll be unlocking if you put your blood points into the clown. At level 30, you'll unlock the teachable for the perk Bamboozle. Bamboozle will make it so you are able to vault 5/10/15% faster, and also performing a vaulting action at a window will spawn an entity blocker at that window, only windows, for 8/12/16 seconds. It specifically states that this only works for windows and does not work at pallets, just in case you thought maybe you could entity block a pallet while vaulting as Legion, I guess. Maybe some people got confused, although I've never actually heard of anyone getting confused by that. This perk could be great for blocking off super annoying window loops, such as the Ironworks window, or certain spawn configurations of windows on maps like the Freezer on the Game or Rancid Abattoir has some really annoying ones. In general, however, I don't think this perk actually does enough to warrant running it in a perk slot, since most of these windows outside of like the very few like the Ironworks window can be just mind gamed and just learn how to run them properly, and you won't ever need to bamboozle off a window. At level 35, you'll unlock the teachable for the perk Calorophobia, which means fear of clowns. Fun fact. Calorophobia will make any survivor within your terror radius have a 30/40/50% slower healing speed. This can be pretty insanely strong, since 50% slower healing speed is quite a lot. But given that most killers' terror radiuses are by default just 32 meters, and a Nurse's Calling has a 28 meter detection range, smarter survivors will not risk healing when they ever hear a heartbeat, for fear of being spotted by Nurse's Calling wall hacks. Some survivors just won't heal at all because it wastes time that they could be using on generators, and they'll just get their heal from adrenaline at the end of the match anyways, so oh well. And finally, at level 40, you unlock the teachable for the perk Pop Goes the Weasel. And we can finally rejoice, friends. As long as behavior keeps the changes that they are currently testing on PTB as of the writing and making of this video, and they bring it to the live build with Ghostface, they finally listened and buffed Pop Goes the Weasel like I've been asking for in these videos for ages now. Thank you, behavior. Pop Goes the Weasel will make it so that for 40/50/60 seconds after hooking a survivor, if you kick a generator to regress it, it will instantly regress that generator by 25% of its maximum progression. The wording on this one is a little bit odd, so let me kind of get into it. Let's say you kick a generator that is 99% complete. It will instantly go down to 74% progress and then start the normal regression of kicking a generator afterwards. If you kick a generator that is at 50%, it will instantly go down to 25%. If you kick a generator that's 24% or lower, it just goes back down to 0, etc. Sadly, there is no negative regression that you can give to generators. It'd be cool to have, but it might possibly make this perk like way too good. Now let's talk about some perk builds for the clown. As always, I'll start off with a build for new players, assuming that they only have the clown's teachable perks and the base killer perks. Then cover the meta build for the clown, discuss a that build, meaning a toxic build that isn't any fun to play against, or even play sometimes, and then round it out at the end with a good old meme build. Starting off with the new player build, your build might look something along the lines of this: Whispers, Sloppy Butcher, Distressing, and Calorophobia. Whispers will give you great tracking, so you know what areas of the map survivors are in, letting you know where to patrol and where you can just avoid because Whispers is not lit up. Sloppy Butcher / Calorophobia obviously both slow down healing by a lot when combined together, and this will either slow the game down in your favor if they attempt to heal, and especially if they attempt to heal in your terror radius, or it will make survivors stay injured, so you only have to hit them once, and this will be a little bit easier because you're the clown and you can potentially just slow them and hit them at a loop instead of getting hit by a pallet. And obviously distressing just makes your terror radius bigger and makes chlorophobia more potent since it will have a wider net of usage, discouraging survivors from healing in an even larger area around you, potentially making it easier for you to down them or wasting a lot of their time. Now let's talk about the meta build for the clown. There are probably two main builds, honestly, depending on your playstyle. The one that I tend to run, and I think the one that is more preferred, is Barbecue and Chili, Hex Ruin, Whispers, and Brutal Strength. This build gives you the extra benefit of having extra tracking in the form of Whispers, and as a fair amount of survivors will drop pallets pretty quickly against the clown, Brutal Strength just helps you shred through the dropped pallets easily. The other build that you might consider would just be your typical Mouse 1 killer build, Barbecue and Chili, Hex Ruin, Enduring, and Spirit Fury. This build does lose you the tracking from Whispers, but helps you swing into pallets by not respecting them in the slightest. So potentially you'll get more benefit out of that if you're swinging into pallets instead of baiting survivors into dropping them and then kicking them with Brutal. It really just depends on whether you think survivors are going to possibly get scared and drop pallets early, or you're planning on just swinging through every pallet in existence. Now let's talk about that build, meaning the toxic build for the clown. It's essentially the same as the Huntress Iridescent Head build, except instead of only having 3 hatchets, you can have 6 bottles. You'd run your typical perk setup that you enjoy using, and then Redhead's Pinky Finger and Cheap Gin Bottle if you want 6 bottles to throw, or a reload speed add-on so you can get more bottles quickly. This makes it so that if you land the bottle toss score event, aka a direct hit with your bottles will basically make it so you just instantly down survivors. It does require a little bit more work than the Huntress's variant, so it is a little more skill intensive, but not by that much. Essentially, you're going to just get right behind a survivor like you're playing Billy and trying to hit a back rev, and then just bop them on the head with a bottle, and then mouse one and they're down. It's a really boring build to play if survivors aren't extremely good at juking you, or you're really bad at tossing bottles. And now let's talk about a meme build for the clown. Normally I know I have at least 2 or 3 meme builds, but his add-ons are pretty vanilla and kind of boring, so I could only really think of one. The one meme build I could think of would be like a Rip Fat Clouds or Vape Nation clown, something, one of those. You're going to want to bring your favorite perk setup, and then the add-ons Bottle of Chloroform and Garish Makeup Kit or Cigar Box. This way, you'll be ripping the fattest clouds with your Afterpiece tonic bottles, and survivors won't be able to ignore the fact that you actually do vape, bro. Shout out to basically every single one of my friends because they pretty much all vape, and when we hang out it feels like I'm actually playing against the clown in real life. It's a real immersive experience. I love you guys. And that's it for this episode of Entity Education, covering the thickest boy in the game, Kenneth Jeffrey Hawk Chase, probably better known as the Clown. The next video will be covering the killer with probably one of the most disturbing backstories and appearances in the game, Rin Yamaoka. Finally, after all these years, he's making the spirit video. Yeah, calm down, guys. I know, I'm just going in order. As always, social media links and whatnot are up on the screen and down in the description. I'm not really going to go into them anymore since it just takes way too long. You can follow me on them, I'm sure. If you've been on the internet and you're using YouTube, you know what all of those things are. I'll see you in the next video for Rin Yamaoka, better known as the Spirit. Goodbye.